Steve was my very favorite cousin. We were born in the same month in the same year. His mom was my mom's sister. We lived on Martha's Vineyard, and Steve grew up in Atlanta. And though we didn't see each other very often, we bonded as babies. His family would come visit us on the vineyard, and we would spend blissful days playing in the sand on the beach. My mom took lots of photos of us together, as childhood portraits were her specialty. So though my childhood memories have faded, I have wonderful photos of Steve and I at the beach and playing in different places to remind me of our wonderful bond. We also shared a love of our beloved grandfather, Grandpa Walling, who taught us so many things, and his big wooden desk is in Steve's office right now. Our two families would sometimes meet on Easter, usually, in Crestwood, New York, where my grandparents lived. I also liked Steve's dad very much. I remember as being very quiet and very thoughtful, and these traits were passed on to Steve. He and his dad and my dad were great friends and actually hunting buddies. And his mom and I had a common interest of horses. After Steve and I graduated from high school, I went off to California at a very young age in pursuit of my career training horses, and Steve went off to college. So we didn't see each other very much for quite some time. He got married and I was busy with my life in California. So I didn't really reconnect with him until he remarried. He and Janice were married on Martha's Vineyard. And unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the wedding. I was working. But Janice, of course, was immediately welcomed into our family, and everyone adored her, of course. Steve had a strong connection with the vineyard since he started visiting as a baby, and he was very anxious to share that with Janice, which he did. He and Janice would visit fairly often when I was there visiting my family, and we always made the rounds of our favorite places. We walked the beach at Quansu, often with the dogs. We went to the Gayhead Cliffs and the lighthouse and Cedar Tree Neck, and we always laughed that we always took the same photos of these same places year after year. But we always had long walks to catch up on each other's lives. Lots of warm memories. Sorry. Steve was a very sweet and generous man and felt like a big brother to me, even though we were the same age. One of the sweetest memories was when he visited Bob and I in Davis. I was very sick with Lyme disease most of my life and in and out of relationships until the age of 60 when I met Bob. I actually didn't just meet him, we got together. I'd known him for about 15 years as we would occasionally work on my house. But he was married, and sometime after his wife passed away, I needed my bathroom remodeled, and Bob started spending time with me going over plans and designs, and in no time at all, we realized how much we liked each other, and the rest is history. But we did fall in together quite quickly, and Steve wanted to be sure Bob was up to snuff for his cousin. So he came to visit us in Davis to vet Bob. We went out to dinner, and Steve got to know Bob and gave me his seal of approval. I always thought that was so sweet, and he wanted to make sure that I'd finally found a good guy, and I sure did. Bob and I were pleased when he and Janice moved to Southern California so we could visit more often, often at the beginning or ending of our cross-country trips to the vineyard. And we got to meet many of you, which has also been a great joy. Knowing that Janice has such a wonderful group of people to support her through this journey makes me really, really happy. Right before we left to come down here, Bob had a great idea. The idea was to write a poem from the song titles that were Steve's favorite bands. Loving music, but not keeping track of bands and such, I didn't figure we had the time to pull that together. So Bob said, well, what about AI? So I got the app, just for kicks, I thought, well, try it, and put in the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Moody Blues. And this is the poem AI came up with. It probably would have been much more meaningful if we had had the time to write it ourselves, but it's kind of fun anyway, and it seemed like a tribute to Steve. So this is the poem for Steve. In a world of Eleanor Rigby, shadows fall. Across the nights in white satin, our hearts recall. A bridge over troubled water, we'll find our way. With a little help from my friends, come what may. The sound of silence whispers through the rainy day, while the logical song plays on in a wistful sway. Under the blue jay way, where time is on my side, we seek a revolution where love and hope abide. A day in the life merges with Tuesday afternoon's grace. In this strange day's journey, we find our place. With Scarborough's fair's promise and a dreamer's song, we walk the long and winding road where we belong. Bob and I will miss Steve very much, as I know all of you will. And now is the time we all must surround Janice with our love and support.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Sarah.